Let's start with Pioneer. How did the project start? How did you get attracted to the subjects?
On my behalf, it started when the producer and the initial screenwriters approached me. This is 6 years ago, I think. They didn't have a story, they had the subject matter, which was the pioneer divers in the late 70s who were trying to sort of cross a threshold in how deep you can actually work underwater.
And it's an interesting name, Pioneer, like that they use that as well. Like, were you punning with that at all? Like, the kind of what that means to be a pioneer, like kind of the negative ramifications?
Yeah, I think Pioneer was attached to it before me, but I really like that title. It's sort of, it can have various connotations, you know, like sort of, and there's always an inherent danger in being the first, you know, whatever you do.
And this is following Nokas. They're both two very historically rooted films that are depicting something that's actually happened. Are you becoming more attracted to that kind of story?
Actually, I think most of my work has been on the threshold between fiction and facts, and it's part of my interest is that a film should somehow connect to the world we live in, somewhat. I kind of like genre movies, and I like playing with them. I like, but it's not enough in of itself. You know, I kind of I feel like it should have it should be rooted somewhere. And then the level of fictionalization, how much you fictionalize, is something I'm kind of open to approach differently in different projects.
And you mentioned genre, and this one, was it kind of like the 70s conspiracy story? Like, it seemed like that was maybe the visual inspiration?
Yeah, see, I grew up in the 70s, and these conspiracy thrillers, especially the American ones, inspired me a lot. So they were kind of part of the aesthetic foundation of what I wanted to achieve with film when I later started making films, and this was a perfect opportunity in many ways, and part of the reason which I was drawn to the project.
It was the one in particular. I was thinking of, I just saw it, but I was thinking of parallax view. I guess a lot of the zooms that were happening and the wide open spaces, like the framing it so there's like a big empty space and like just two characters.
No, not particularly parallax view. I remember at the time, I never went back and looked at the movies because that's not quite how I work. I sort of trust that it's somewhere in here anyway. But I was very inspired at the time by The Conversation by Coppola, and also there's something about All the President Men which I found very intriguing. It's like a story you somehow know. But it still felt very. It felt kind of exciting to watch something you knew, which was historically correct, and at the same time, it sort of ended midway through the actual event. And that film in particular, I thought there's something about it which I felt was inspiring.
One shot that keeps sticking in my mind, having just seen it, it's repeated a few times, but it's like an overhead kind of zoom, or not zoom, a tracking shot from the overhead. In like, it's kind of like it's scanning a space, and that just stuck with me, and I'm curious why that comes up a few times.
Well, working with the cinematographer Hjallo Faber, this is what I normally like to do. We try and work out some set of rules. Obviously we can break them if we want to, and one of the rules where we were gonna, at certain points in the movie, use the overhead shot. And I think part of my inspiration for that was that these are divers working at the bottom of the sea, and the perspective upon that is looking down, looking from above down. It's also within the hierarchy, because it depicts a hierarchy, a social hierarchy. And the divers are at the bottom of that hierarchy. So that's the main inspiration for those overhead shots.
and working with the cinematographer underwater especially, like there's the shots are so composed, but I feel like when you're shooting underwater, it must be so difficult to have that level of control.
We looked through a lot of underwater films,
okay,
just to get a sense of what was going to be the main challenges. At the same time, we did research with the original pioneer divers, and they would tell me like that on a good day, because it's weather dependent down there as well, you could see clear, you could see very, very far in dark water, and that's what it's like to be at the bottom. And that inspired me a lot, actually. That was like sort of an image which stuck with me. But once we started working on how to achieve this, it became the main challenge of making the movie. Because it's just like if you pour a little bit of milk into a pool, it will instantly go a little muddy. You lose clarity. And that's what you find in most movies which are shot underwater movies, you know. So we researched it. We thought about doing it like sort of dry for wet. Didn't want to do that because I felt it wasn't going to be organic enough and we were going to lose economic control. So eventually there was a Finnish diving film team who researched it and came back with a lake on Iceland which has the clearest water they could find. And the basics for that was that it's water from a glacier which has been filtered by lava sand for like 30 kilometers, and it comes out in a sort of like a crevasse. And they could more or less guarantee clear water.
Oh, okay.
And then we shot it at night. So that's where we shot the wide shots. And our main inspiration for doing so, you know, the visual inspiration wasn't. There's The Abyss, which is the one movie which actually achieves this, you know, but it's the most expensive movie you can think of, which my producers kept reminding me, and fair enough. But we were also looking at science fiction movies because they have this infinite depth, which you get in space. And we were looking at that, and those were sort of some of the visual references.